I need to know what's in the bank and what still needs to be paid, and then what's the delta. What do I have left over? Because that's what I can truly spend or invest back in the company.
Welcome to the Execs.Coach podcast. Are you a business leader or someone with aspirations of improving your leadership skills? If you're looking to uncover what it takes to be a successful leader in today's environment, listening to the Execs.Coach podcast will be well worth the investment of your time. Now, let's jump into the conversation with Executive Coach Ed Rankin and serial entrepreneur Doug Parker.
All right, we are back on Execs.Coach podcast. I'm Doug Parker.
And I'm Ed Rankin.
And we are going to talk to you today about mastermind groups and kind of what they consist of. So, Ed, have you ever participated in anything like that?
I have, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I have as well. And I really think it's great. We've talked about this pretty much in every podcast, but learn from other people's successes. And we were actually talking to the producer just a little bit earlier of the show today, Mark, and Mark Fansler with Fansler Design. He does everything you could imagine, but he actually is in a mastermind group, and he and I have known each other for almost 2 decades. But he was talking about how he had gotten into a mastermind group and really was learning stuff, because what I find is your competitors aren't normally going to tell you things, okay? It's just not how it works. And while everybody is in some kind of a way a competitor of yours, when you get in these smaller settings, you get to know people, and maybe technically you're a competitor, but you're not in the same market, or maybe they're in a different vertical, or maybe they're a lot bigger than you are, and you're kind of on a little smaller session. So, maybe it's a way that you can work together. But I've always enjoyed mastermind groups, but there's a bunch of different ones out there. So, what can you say about your experience with masterminds?
Well, I think it'd be really helpful, particularly if you are a solopreneur. That's someone that's kind of an individual, like Mark. He works for himself. He's an individual entrepreneur. You really don't have an opportunity to share ideas, thoughts, beliefs, questions with anybody unless it doesn't happen. Well, it doesn't happen easily. Mm-hmm. And I think what the mastermind groups do is they provide a platform where we can share ideas, challenges, successes with other people who are maybe at a similar place in their life, where they're also entrepreneurs, and they're many times facing similar challenges. So and learning, as you said, from other people's successes. Maybe they have you can voice or explain to the group a problem or challenge you're having. Maybe hopefully someone in that group has had a similar challenge and they've successfully managed it. So you can learn from how they manage their challenge, and maybe you incorporate some of what they did into your response.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, and here's the thing I've run into over the years, and maybe you have as well. So as an entrepreneur, the solo entrepreneurs, but then there's the smaller entrepreneurs, and your business kind of continues to mature, and you're at a different level. So there's different mastermind groups that do different things, right? And so some of them, you have to have certain amount of employee count. You got to have certain annual revenues. They try to group similar people with similar people, because to your point, everybody that works, for me in a business, they work for me. And you want them to be obviously part of the team. You want them to give you advice, but they don't understand what you're going through. They don't have payrolls of $50,000 or $100,000 a week. They cannot wrap their head around something like that. They may not make that in a year. And so you go to a group with other people, and they can give you feedback on things. And does it make sense? I mean, there's all these different opportunities like factoring. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but I know there's companies out there that they do factoring. They loan you money on your accounts receivable, but man, the rates are crazy. I mean, I'm making this up here, but I think it was like 10%. They'll loan you the money on your accounts receivables that are coming in next month for 10%. 10%. So if you borrow $100,000 from them, they're going to charge you $10,000, but you can get your $100,000 today instead of waiting for it to come in next month. But that's 10% in 1 month. Okay, I don't know what that is annualized, but it's a whole bunch. And is that a good thing for you? I don't know. I never like borrowing money in general. I'm an entrepreneur that prefers to kind of pay for stuff, but there's business owners out there that they've leveraged their accounts receivable. They leverage and borrow money and use borrowed money to make money. Some of those things I can't wrap my head around, but when you get into groups of other people, they can explain to you how it works, why it's beneficial. And until you are exposed to it, you don't know what you don't know. Okay.
Yeah, factoring actually saved my business for a while because we were so new. We didn't have a banking relationship, and we're growing so fast. And my business was selling time basically to my clients. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing work with large corporations, and they pay in 30 days at best, right? Mm-hmm. So I was growing so quickly. I was outrunning my growth. I was hiring people faster than the cash was coming in, and I really didn't have any place to go. But I found a factoring firm here, Action Dallas, one of the best in the country at the time, and it was expensive, but it allowed me to get out of that. And when we got our cash flow back in place, I went to a traditional lender, and we had just a general line of credit from commercial bank. But I'm not sure how I heard about factoring. Someone, maybe it was in a mastermind group. I don't know. I was at that time. I think I was participating in one. Yeah,
absolutely. And and I'm not necessarily promoting factoring or not promoting it. It just happened to come up in the conversation.
I say avoid it if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but here's the other side of it. If you avoid it altogether, and if you'd avoided it then, you may not have had any of the successes that you've had, because it may have been a situation where it's just like the success of your business collapsed on itself because it was so successful so quickly.
Well, yeah, and I didn't understand that. How can I have this company that's so successful? I've got all this demand for my work, and I have no money.
Right. Yeah. No. And when you're out of money and you start juggling stuff, and it creates stresses and it puts you in a weird position. And so again, back to mastermind groups. You get in a group and they tell you how to maneuver through that.
Well, Doug, I do remember it actually was a mastermind group facilitator that said to me one day, he said, Ed, businesses don't go out of business because they run out of business. They go out of business because they run out of cash.
That's true.
So once I got that, but you're looking at a guy who had no previous business experience at all. I mean, my education was in psychology. I had no business. I don't think I'd ever completed any business classes in college. So I just kind of walked into this thing not knowing very much and learning on the fly, which.
Yeah. Absolutely. So different mastermind groups, and we're not necessarily promoting any particular mastermind group. Now, here's the thing: we're a few months into this podcast now, and I think at some point, Ed and I've got some wheels rolling. We're both entrepreneurs, and we're probably going to be doing some mastermind group stuff. But with that being said, I mean, there's Vistage. I've got some notes here with BNI. We've got Entrepreneur Organization. We've got like 10X with Dan Sullivan. So there's a lot of different ones that are out there. Do you have any experience with any of those, or any thoughts on any of them?
Yeah, I think I think the one that I participated with at the time, I think it was called Corporate Executive Board. I don't know whether that still exists or not, but I found it helpful. Like for example, just having a facilitator tell me that, and I think maybe he was the one that suggested factoring. I don't remember, but I think it's important to kind of look at how the groups are structured. Like you said earlier, there are different criteria for admission, for acceptance in the group. I think it's usually it's good if you can find yourself in a group of people that are kind of in similar sized businesses, have similar size. In the group that I was involved with, there were lots of different businesses there, different industries represented, and cash flow is cash flow, whether it's consulting or whether it's, selling widgets. And so learning about how other people deal with some of those things can be really helpful. It was to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you said about cash flow. I used to have a CPA that worked for me, and she was a great CPA, love her to death, and she would always talk about how good the numbers look. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, tell me what you're talking about. Oh, well, the accounts receivable, blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, listen, I don't care about accounts receivables. Here's what I care about. How much money I got in the bank. What bills do I have left to pay? And then what's left over, that's what is cash flow. That is real money that I can spend. Other than that, none of these other numbers matter to me. They are a lagging indicator of the success that we're having.
Correct.
But based upon how I've operated my businesses, is that I need to know what's in the bank and what still needs to be paid, and then what's the delta. What do I have left over? Because that's what I can truly spend or invest back in the company and whatever. And so, yes, over the years we've had lines of credit and different things. We never had to do the factoring, but I just prefer to be debt-free. I like debt-free, and there's a lot of people out there, that'll tell you about there's good debt versus bad debt, and all those kind of things. And I think that all debt costs money. I had this epiphany at a very early age. I think I was probably in my 20s, and I had a credit card, and I think the total amount of my debt was something like $5,000, but it could have been $5 million because the position I had gotten into, I'd had an accident, a piece of wood flew through the windshield of my car, broke my hand. I had 2 little babies. My wife was a full-time student. And it was just a situation where I couldn't, I just couldn't make ends meet, and I had to start making some decisions on, feeding my kids, roof over their head, cars to drive, and everything else. And so through that whole process, we ultimately formed this company that was an Inc. 500 company, and some massively cool stuff came out of it. But at that time, I was really in rough shape. Yeah. But when I looked at that $5,000 in debt at 20% interest, which what the credit card rates were on it, I was like, so you mean to tell me I can buy like 20% more stuff, okay, if I just pay cash for it instead of having the debt associated with it. And that was just an aha moment for me. I mean, obviously, most things aren't at 20%. I mean, houses or cars, none of that stuff is at 20% if you got good credit. But it was just an eye-opener of how much more you can buy if you're just paying cash. And so for me, I've operated my businesses that way, my personal life that way. You know, I like not having debt. But, you know, with that being said, everybody has different influences and different people that have had impacts on them. And I think that's one of the things that we'll see about these mastermind groups is, you know, who are you allowing to influence you? You know, not to get too deep into the Bible or anything like that, but, you know, in Proverbs, it talks about a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Okay, that's something I'm a big believer in, but that's with like your grandchildren basically. But there's another part that talks about he who walks with the wise will become wise, and the companion of fools will suffer harm, okay? And there's a lot of things you'll see in different books, mentoring or whatever, that are truly biblical principles. And so I think mastermind groups are basically an extension of that for sure, because you're trying to get around wise people that are other successful business people, that are having success in their business, that are doing the things that they need to be doing in their business, that they can help you with your business. And then hopefully you're in a position as you go into the group, you can give some positive feedback and you can help influence and impact them as well. So that's one of the things I've taken away from mastermind groups, both in participating in them, that I've been around, you know, people that have invested in me and I've learned a lot from them. And then in life, I mean, hopefully you've never been through this before, Ed, but I've been around some dodos before, you know what I mean? And it's impacted me in a negative way. And it doesn't say in the Bible that you walk with the wise, you'll become wise, but the companion of fools, they'll be foolish. It says you'll suffer harm. And I assure you, I've been on the other side of that too. So, you know, I always encourage people, get around as many wise people that are having success, they've got the things that you want. Those are the people you want to take advice from. And, you know, kind of to tie back into coaching, because I know we do so much with the executive coaching with what you're doing, but you're looking for people that have had success, right? So you're looking to duplicate what they have seen successful in their lives. So you don't want to take advice from somebody. If you're a billion-dollar executive, you don't want to be taking advice from a $1 million executive, okay? You want to be taking advice from somebody else that's at the same level that you are, because they got a different set of problems, right?
Yeah, and you know, Doug, that was one of the experiences I had in one of the mastermind groups I participated in is, you know, like you, I was an entrepreneur. I was creating something. Mm-hmm. And most of the members of the group were more business people. So they were people that had maybe inherited their father's dry cleaning business and expanded it from 2 locations to 10. Not an easy feat, and not to diminish what they've achieved, mm-hmm. but they weren't doing what I was doing.
Right.
And I found that, so in that one I didn't find as beneficial. So I think back to your comment earlier, it's important to find one that you can give and take, mm-hmm. And in an equal amount. You know, back to your biblical references, and I think every time I look at Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I see biblical scripture all through there. Sure. Yes, some of these principles are timeless. Mm-hmm. You know, they've withstood thousands of years. There's a lot of wisdom there.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no question about it. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just one of those kind of situations where, information is out there. It gets regurgitated, in a different form. It may be from a different voice, from a different part of the world, but all this information is out there. And that's one of the things I love about going through books. And you mentioned, the successful or highly habits of successful people, 7 habits of highly successful people. It's every time I read a book, there are 2 or 3 principles that I have read somewhere else.
Yes.
And my wife continues to remind me of this all the time. So I'll bring something up to her and she'll be like, I've been telling you that for years. I'm like, well, listen, okay, so you planted a seed, all right? Somebody else watered it, okay? And then somebody else fertilized it, and then somebody else put some sunshine on it, and it finally sprouted, okay? Like, yeah, I'll give you credit for it, but sometimes I've got to hear stuff a couple of times before it actually truly sinks in. So, that's one of the things about these mentoring programs or these mastermind groups where, sometimes you may hear something from somebody that for whatever reason it just doesn't resonate with you, but from a different voice, you hear it in a different way. But the more times that seed gets planted or it gets nourishment, the more likely it is to sprout. And so that's one of the things, like I said, I always like about mastermind groups is getting around like-minded people, finding ways to accomplish goals. And we're not promoting any one specific mastermind group, but I encourage you to be involved in a mastermind group of some sort, because it gives you that ability to get around people to get better and do things. So one other thing that we need to talk about is just the investment that it takes to be in a mastermind group, right? So there's obviously the financial investment, and those can widely vary based upon which group you're part of, and is it weekly, is it monthly, is it in person, Zoom? There's the financial investment of what that looks like, and every group's going to be different. I'm not here to tell you that's a lot or it's not a lot, but we had talked about this earlier about companies investing in their employees. Is it more expensive to invest in your employees or not invest in them? But I think it's the same thing applies for individuals. Is it more expensive to invest in yourself, or is it more expensive not to invest in yourself? And I think it's definitely more expensive to not invest in yourself, because it is what it is. But can you talk a little bit about like maybe the time investment, some of the things that you've seen over the years with those groups?
Yeah, one particularly that I find real attractive is it requires quite a bit of time commitment from the participants. So there would be there's a kickoff weekend where the group comes together.
Mm-hmm.
So the time frame's a year. Mm-hmm. There's a kickoff weekend where the group comes together, a meeting. There's facilitated discussions. It's usually Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon. People leave, but that would be like, for example, the facilitator could be in Dallas, so people flying in from all over the country, maybe to Dallas, participating this weekend. Then there's a monthly meeting, usually on the Friday, one Friday each month. And because of COVID now, people have gone to more blended meetings. So I guess travel is optional, but in some cases, the facilitator wants you there personally and present. So that would be another flight to Dallas, possibly, so the host is in Dallas, once a month for that meeting. And then generally there's a meeting in the midway, another weekend session.
Okay.
You go back to monthly meetings. Then at the end of the year, there'd be another weekend meeting. So that's a significant commitment. Yeah, and I think you're looking at probably from a financial perspective, some of these anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 annual investment to participate.
Yep. Well, and I've seen some of them that go up, $50,000 to $100,000.
Yes.
And it depends on really what you're getting and the level of expertise. I mean, so you may have people that are at if you're a solopreneur, you're just getting started. Well, those guys, they might not make 50 or 100 grand in a year.
Right.
While others are at executive level, and it needs to be a little bit more skin in the game to make it where it makes sense. But so you've got the time commitment of that investment, you've got the financial commitment, what's going on there, and you talked about kind of both of those. And I think there's the commitment of engagement. One of the things is like, it's one thing to show up and just get information, but I've heard this analogy before. It's kind of like the waterfall, right? So if a waterfall just keeps waterfalling down into a bucket, if you will, eventually that bucket's going to overflow. But if you're just trying to keep all that information to yourself, then it'll eventually explode, and it's not good. So you want to kind of cascade from this waterfall to that waterfall to the next waterfall. And part of those mastermind groups is you're getting poured into, but then you're trying to turn around and pour back into the group. So part of your investment is engagement. You've got to make sure that you're engaged with the group. And I think, we were talking about this the other day. Part of it is, on the ongoing basis. If you make a commitment to do a year, you need to be committed to doing a year. There are some outs sometimes, but the reality is you're making a significant time commitment in the beginning, a significant financial investment in the beginning, and you need to show up and contribute to what's going on. Because I've been in groups before where somebody is maybe they're a little more introverted, and then there's somebody that's a little more extroverted. And if you're not careful, you got somebody that's the extrovert that is doing all of the participating, and the introvert is just sitting there taking notes. And the good part about a facilitator, and maybe as you're choosing who you want to be part of or what group you want to be part of, who's facilitating this thing? You know what I mean?
For sure.
Are they going to be able to wrangle everybody in and pull out information from introverts and in a diplomatic way get the extroverts to kind of slow down just a little bit to get more engagement? So that's real important, who's going to be facilitating it. If there's any advice I'd give you about mastermind groups, is just who's your facilitator. Get to know them before you sign up. That might be the one piece of advice I'm giving today. I know we're talking a lot about coaching and how that's not necessarily advice, but that might be one piece of advice I'll give you. And again, there's going to be more to come at our Execs.Coach. I mean, we're going to definitely have some things that we're going to roll out, and as we're expanding our reach and doing things, we'll plug it right here on the podcast and on the website. But you can tune in anywhere that you get your podcast. Anything that you missed, we're going to put into the show notes. And Ed, we're wrapping up on the mastermind groups. Was there any little nuggets of wisdom or anything that we might have left out you can think of?
No, but I have a feeling that if you and I take a hard look at this, we'll be looking at some more timeless principles to weave into our approach.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you need anything, let us know. Execs.Coach is the podcast. Execs.Coach is also the website. So have a great day, everybody. Doug Park.
Yeah, Rankin, thank you.